What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Pat Outdoors. Hope you're having a great weekend. I should be getting my new controller for the MX650 anytime now. So we're gonna be putting this bike back together shortly. I just finished bypassing the BMS on my BTR power pack, my 48 volt battery that I ordered like a week or so ago. I bypassed the BMS because I took a peek inside and noticed that the battery management system is actually stamped 30 amp, which I'm not too quite happy about, but I'm power hungry and I already bought a 72 volt battery. So we're just gonna bypass it and make the most out of what we already have. I'm not gonna go into full detail how I bypassed the BMS because this is not something I've done before. Neither is it something I recommend you do. This is just for my personal experiment because I'm trying to get the most speed out of this thing. But just to give you a brief summary on what I did, I bypassed the discharge side of the BMS, but I left the charging side of the BMS alone because I don't want to overcharge my battery and I want to make sure that it charges all the cells evenly. And in case you have the same kind of battery as this and you're curious how to get to the BMS, I basically cut a slit on each corner of this outer sleeve at the bottom and I pulled it upward. Be careful with all the wires. And then you set the black cover aside and you take the tape off on each edge and slip the top cover off. The BMS is actually right here on this kind of battery. And to put it back together after you do what you gotta do, you just do the same thing, slip the cover back on, tape it up, slide the sleeve back on, and I taped it back up at the bottom, and let's go test out the voltage. All right, so this is the discharge plug. This is what connects to the rest of the bike. Let's see what voltage it shows, 54.5 volts. So this is about right. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. Battery reinstalled, voltage step-down converter reinstalled, and Kunray controller removed. Everything should be set for the new controller to go in. I'm not too disappointed with this controller, considering the Kunray 48 volt brushless kit is less than $200. But this controller is rated only for 33 amps and it's a 15 MOSFET controller. So realistically, this thing doesn't output more than 1600 watts. So hopefully the new 45 amp controller lets us maximize the output of the motor. The new controller finally came in. It's noticeably larger than the Kunray one. The wiring and the quality, however, doesn't seem as high quality as the Kunray one, but if it functions as designed, then I'm completely fine with it. The manual is mostly in Chinese, but really this is the main thing you need is the diagram, and it seems pretty easy to follow. I'm also going to take this opportunity to reinstall the throttle that came with my Fast Scooters kit. Since I like the display much better on this one, so I'm just gonna have to repin the connectors to make it work with the new controller. So this is my first time repinning a connector, and it's actually much easier than I thought. I'm just taking a really small flathead screwdriver and pushing down on this notched area on the pin while it's inside the connector. You see them in there, and then you just pull the wire from the backside while you're pressing it down. And I just did the same thing to remove this 3-pin connector from the Kunray throttle. And then I'm going to insert the green, red, and black wire into this one to have it perfectly mate to this 3-pin connector going to the new controller. And just like that, this throttle should now work with this controller, in theory. And then these two extra wires are for the power source. This is actually for the ignition. So one of these I'm gonna hook up to the power source for the battery. And then the other one I'm gonna hook up to this red wire going to the controller, which is what's supposed to trigger it to turn on when I turn the ignition key on. So I modified both the front and rear brackets of the controller. This side I just bent down, and then this side I actually cut a slit in the middle. So it'll go around this portion of the frame when I tie it in place, just like that. I finally got the controller fully wired up. I just use as much of this protective wire wrap to clean things up as much as possible on the front end, since this part is going to be exposed. And then I just left the two test wires exposed in case the wheel spins backwards initially. Then I'll do the test procedure to get it to spin the right way. I haven't plugged the battery to everything just yet. I'm gonna get my fire extinguisher and set it aside next to me for the initial test, just to be safe. Let's test this thing out. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. So I just reviewed all of the wiring and I know it's hooked up correctly. When I key on, showing 46.6 volts. And then it attempts to initially move the wheel, but I notice when I turn the light on, the voltage jumps around a lot and it drops down all the way to 17, 18 volts with just that little bit of load. So I think the battery is just not supporting everything. Just to confirm that everything is wired up correctly, I made a test bench battery out of all the SLA batteries, have them wired up to this plug. We're gonna connect it and see if it works. Alright guys, the new controller is officially installed. I was a little bit worried at first when I turned it on since the wheel wasn't spinning when I was throttling it. But I just had to do the relearn procedure with the white plugs and it eventually spun the correct direction. Another thing that was interesting that I noticed was the speed controller still functions as it should, but it's in the different order of speed as it was when it was hooked up to the Kunray controller. 3 is now the slowest setting, 2 is the middle, and 1 is the fastest speed setting. I might repin the connector at a later date to change the order, but it functions just fine as it is, so I'm gonna leave it alone for now. Unfortunately, the BTR Power Pack BMS bypass modification that I did not function correctly. I'm gonna have to do some further diagnosing to see what went wrong there. But since this controller is compatible with 48 to 72 volts, I'm just gonna wait for my new battery pack to come in this week. My 72 volt, 50 amp hour battery from BTR Power. And I'm gonna install that on this bike since that's not gonna be limiting the setup. I am also buying a second bike this week for my fiance. So I'm just gonna use my 48 volt pack when I have the BMS issue resolved on her bike, along with some new parts. So stay tuned for that build that's coming soon. If you found today's video helpful in any way, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, want to keep up with some of my projects, consider subscribing to my channel. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching.